You're listening to the Naptime Empires podcast with my mom, Nikki Elledge Brown. Mom, your show's on.
Thanks, bud. I got it from here. Welcome to the Naptime Empires podcast, refreshingly honest conversations on the realities of parenthood and entrepreneurship. I'm your host, Nikki Elledge Brown. Let's get started. If you ever find yourself on the digi-sidelines and you're watching what feels like everyone else doing the darn thing, building the business, living the dream, going on the vacation, putting themselves out there, pressing record, starting the podcast, sending the email, and you're sitting there and you're thinking, that just can't be me. I can't do that. There's a difference between them and me. One, I completely understand. I do this with my past self. Like, I literally look at videos of my past self and I'm like, Nikki, you were so in the zone. I am not that girl anymore. It's not true, by the way. Spoiler alert, it's not true. But I'm telling you, I do this with myself. I do this with Oprah, for Pete's sake. I'm like, Oprah is doing her thing. She's in her zone. She's putting herself out there. I do this. It's normal. There's no shame in it. But there's also not a ton of value in like sitting in it, simmering and steeping in it. And it sucks, quite honestly. So in this episode, in this conversation, I just want to call us out in love on that mess so that we can jump in the freaking game and have and create some of our own fun and our momentum. And you know, I'm always talking to myself as I am talking to you. We teach what we most need to learn. I don't feel like I'm teaching. I'm just sharing here because this is something I did actually Facebook Live on this 2 years ago. I just went back to Facebook to find it and I'll link it in the show notes when I create the show notes for this episode. But it's something that is a recurring theme for me, which is why I'm going to keep talking about it. And I feel like maybe I have talked about it in a podcast before, but you know what I'm realizing? It's like, this is just my truth bubbling to the top. This is my message bubbling to the top. So if I repeat myself and I say the same thing, but like with, you know, a different emphasis on a different syllable or syllable, then, oh well, that's just because that's what I'm inspired to share. So if it's the same thing over and over, I'm giving myself permission to say that because I know I need to hear it over and over. And you, as my dreamie on the other end of the earbud, I think you may need to hear it over and over too. Okay, so really, I titled this The Difference Between You and Them, air quotes. Them. Well, actually, if you're listening, you see the real quotes, but I'm doing air quotes now. And that's what I called this live stream years ago because that's what it feels like, doesn't it? It feels like there is a difference between you and them. For Pete's sake, okay, so we had a lovely family day. It was so beautiful. The weather in Houston today was amazing and super fallish. We're in a weird transition right now. It's between Thanksgiving and Christmas. In terms of inside our house, the decorations, it's very confusing. But anyway, we had a beautiful day. My sisters had Bryson, and then I brought Deacon home for a nap, and Jeremy was gone at work, and I had the day to myself. And what did I do? I sat on Instagram because I deleted my Facebook app from my phone so that I wouldn't mindlessly scroll through Facebook. And dude, if I have not spent more time on Instagram than I've ever spent in my life in the 2 weeks since I deleted Facebook, because now I'm spending all that time on Instagram. By the way, if you're not following me on Instagram, I'm having a lot of fun playing with Instagram stories, and that relates to what we're talking about today. But anyway, so that's a sidebar. Make sure you follow me there if you want to, if you're on Instagram, Nikki Elledge Brown. But anyway, all that to say, I literally spent at least half an hour flipping through the Kardashian profiles. Like, you know, Kardashians, Kim Kardashian, Kylie, Kendall. Like, I literally spent half an hour of my life today looking through Instagram. And I was just like, wow, whoa, that's amazing. What are they doing? Wow, that's such a different life, la, la, la. Okay, so there are differences, right? But the truth is, I mean, their mom started the empire. Let's not get too in the weeds with this analogy. The point is, it all came back to a decision. Okay, that's a sidebar and very extreme. You know, I talked about Oprah, now I'm talking about the Kardashians. Let's bring it back to yourself, like your most out there in your zone of genius, living your dream self. whoever that version of you is. Let's talk about when you look back, or even if it's like when you felt really amazing in your own body and you look back at your pictures and you're like, oh, you were really taking care of yourself, whatever that was. Or if you look back at a better year in business and you look back at that profit and loss statement like it was a bikini photo, and you're like, oh man, you were really doing it. And now there's a difference between you and me. The truth is, there is not a difference. The difference is that version of you or that person that you're putting on a pedestal made a decision. It was a decision. So let's think about your, people that you look up to in business. At some point, once upon a time, they were at 0. No followers, no fans, no subscribers, no videos, no idea what a live stream was because it didn't exist. And they didn't know what was going to happen when they put themselves out there, or who would say something, or who would think something, who would comment, who would share, if anyone would buy that course. And they went for it anyway, whether it was a baby step or a giant, like Big Mama leap of faith. It all comes back to a decision. Yes, there are all kinds of other factors in life. I understand that. I'm not trying to pretend like we exist in a vacuum, but really, ultimately, it always comes down to the decision. That is the tipping point. And you are totally capable of making that decision. And today is a perfect day for it, if I do say so myself. Even this podcast, me choosing to record this podcast, I love, to do things when I feel inspired. And I talk about divine breadcrumbs. We have a whole podcast dedicated to that. I could talk about divine breadcrumbs all day. Love talking about inspiration and all of that. But if you've ever read Stephen Pressfield, The War of Art, he talks about when you show up for your work, oh, looky there, inspiration comes along too. And that's a totally weak sauce paraphrase. But it's true. And so anyway, today I decided I was going to record this podcast, even though it's not ideal to record on a Sunday night because I ideally like to publish on Mondays. So that's not probably happening this week. But I just wanted to do it anyway. And so I set the intention earlier this evening. I was like, I'm going to do my little 15-minute workout DVD, and I'm going to take a shower, and I'm going to trust that one message is going to rise to the top in my brain. Like one message is going to feel more powerful, like urgent, immediate. This is the one that needs to come. And so I had like 5 different ideas, but the one that really came through is, why not you? That was my alternate title, by the way. I hate naming, titling things, email subject lines. Like, I love just the message part, but actually picking a title and a subject line is really annoying to me, which is why I say, again, teach what we most need to learn. It doesn't need to be perfect. It just needs to be shared. But just so you know, the alternate universe, the title of this particular episode is Why Not You? Because that's really what it comes down to. Why not you? Why can't you do that? Well, you can. You have to decide, though, that you're going to. And I know, I'm not trying to oversimplify it, but I kind of am, because you're probably overcomplicating it. I know, because I do it too. And when I recorded this live stream 2 years ago, it was April 19th, had to have been, obviously, 2015, since it was 2 years ago. And while I was on the live stream, I realized, oh snap, 2 years before that, I had sent my first email to 41 people. I still remember where I was. I was sitting at my parents' kitchen table here in Houston, in my hometown, and my sister and brother-in-law were there, and I high-fived the male chimp monkey, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is a really big deal. This is my first email. And it went out to 41 people. I've sent emails, I do list cleanses and things, but at the time when I was recording this live stream a couple years ago, I was sending an email out to 28,000 people that week. Well, it all started with the decision to send the first email, even though I didn't have a website, even though I didn't even have a paid offer or anything like that. It always goes back to what I say, know your value, know who needs it, communicate your value to the people who need it in a smart, authentic way. And the older I get, the wiser I get, air quotes again, the more I realize that your value, you are your value, right? Thanks to my buddy Susan Ferraro for that. That she has to keep reminding me. But if I had never just sent the freaking email because I was waiting for everything to be perfect, or I was waiting for the permission fairy to come down from the heavens and grant me permission to put myself out there, then who knows what would have happened. Things took off really fast. It's a wild and crazy story. I talk about it a lot in episode 1 if you haven't listened to it yet. But I just made that decision. And I just want to encourage you because it matters. What you want to do and what you want to share matters. Let's go back to Instagram stories, which I don't understand. And I'm a little upset because I just Googled and realized you have to have more than 10,000 followers to be able to do the swipe up for the link thing. Because I was trying to figure out how can I link to the podcast while I'm doing this. And I can't, because I don't yet have 10,000 followers on Instagram, but I will. Because I'm okay with having whatever I have now, 3,600, It doesn't just happen. You just have to keep showing up. Anyway, I'm having a lot of fun on Instagram stories, but it was confusing to me because I was like, what are people doing here? I don't know. I haven't spent much time on Instagram. Like I said, normally I'm on Facebook, but since I'm having a newsfeed timeout on Facebook, I've been playing more on Instagram and I've watched some stories and I'm like, okay, I'm going to comment. Because I feel weird that people can see that I've watched them. And then if I don't comment, and that's, no judgment if you just like watching and you never comment. But for me, I like to comment if I'm watching, unless it's a good friend and she knows like, whatever, Nikki's just checking in. Anyway, so I asked on my Instagram stories, like, what are y'all doing here? What do you do? What do you like? Why do you like to watch them? Is it kind of like instead of watching TV, do you feel weird if you comment or if you don't comment? And if you are creating Instagram stories and you see people who are watching, what do you do with that information? What kind of stuff do you share on Instagram stories? And what I'm realizing, to be honest, I mean, just like anything with any social media, especially, it's the communication nerd in me that is really fascinated by this, the human behavior and the social science piece. Remember, that's my background in my bachelor's and master's degrees, both in communication studies, how and why we communicate the way we do. But Facebook was just kind of coming around when I was in grad school. And so social media, like the conversation was just beginning. I mean, I'm sure there's some really geeky and interesting conversations going on in there now. But anyway, I was just wondering, how do people use this? And it's just, we're making it up as we go. Everyone is making it up as we go. I know I'm going on a little communication nerd sidebar, but we're making it up as we go. I mean, whether it's Oprah sharing something, or I love Glennon Doyle, whatever she's sharing. One of my new buddies who commented and sent me a direct message recommended I follow Busy Phillips, the actress, who's hilarious, and to see how she uses it. My sister-in-law told me about a really amazing woman on her own health journey and how she follows it. And I'm like, it's just about connecting, but it's really just people who decided to put themselves out there in silly ways. Like I put a Snapchat video. I had a really helpful tutorial that I put up on how to fold a fitted sheet. That's totally sarcastic if you didn't pick up on that. I don't even attempt to fold fitted sheets anymore. I just wad them up and stick them in the closet. My mom and Martha Stewart are the only two people I know who can actually really consistently fold fitted sheets. I think I did a whole video on that once upon a time. Anyway, it seems silly, but people just want to feel connected. And one of my, again, new Instagram buddies, Kate Potts, she compared it to like just looking inside your buddy's fridge. It's kind of like that. The Instagram stories thing, who knows? Who knows how it's going to evolve over time or whatever. But right now it's wild new frontier. And I just find it fascinating that it's just people choosing to share stuff. I mean, Instagram feed is kind of the same thing, although people curate that more, I guess. But that's what I think is really cool about people craving real connection and just kind of seeing what life is like. And people are just choosing. There's no difference between the people who are doing Instagram stories. This may seem like a silly example to you, or maybe not, because maybe you have a business and social media is part of how you connect with your dreamies and your community and your audience, that kind of thing. But it's like people are just choosing, deciding, I'm going to share something today about my day. I'm going to decide to share this. And then you get feedback, which is also an important piece of the communication puzzle. You get feedback. Like I've had some laugh cry emojis about my sheet tutorial. It wasn't a tutorial, by the way. It won't be up there anymore by the time you hear this, but it was just a picture because I was doing laundry while watching Scandal, which is just a thing I do lately. I watch Scandal on the iPad, and then I do my laundry for the week. Anyway, I just think it's interesting. And I know exactly where you are, because in lots of ways I am there currently right now. And I'm very proud of myself for actually recording this podcast, because there are so many voices in my head that are telling me, what? Who cares? Why do you even have a podcast? Oh my gosh, why are you putting yourself out there? Why do you have a podcast? There's a voice in my head that says that. Why do you have a podcast? Why would you post that? Why would you send an email? I mean, never mind the fact that these people actually signed up to receive emails from me. So that's like permission granted, right? That's the other cool thing I like about Instagram stories, is that it's not even in the newsfeed. People have to like voluntarily enter the world of stories to find you. Okay. Anyway, do you get what I'm saying? There's not a difference. There's not a fundamental difference. I mean, yes, differences in personalities, blah, blah, blah. Understand. I'm not saying that there's not a difference, literally. But the only meaningful difference between you and the version of you who's out there doing the thing is the decision to do the thing. This is important. And so I'm sure I'll have multiple podcasts on this. I'll do some more Facebook Lives on it. I'll keep reminding us as long as we need reminding, dude, because it's important. There's not a difference. I haven't read the book, James Altucher, Choose Yourself, but choose yourself. Just decide. And you know, the beautiful thing is the feedback. Hang on, let me go back into my email and find the email that I sent this week that I was inspired to send after I was inspired to share and ask people on Instagram stories, like, what are you using it for? And so I had over 20 people private message me, and I totally invite you to do that. I'm not guaranteeing I'm going to respond, because what if you're listening to this way in the future and I have like so many squillions of followers, I can't get back to everyone. But right now that is totally not the case. So I would love to hear from you on Instagram. So basically I was sharing, this is what was going on, and I was on Instagram and I was asking people, if you watch them, do you leave comments? Why or why not? If you post them, what do you do with the knowledge that so many people watched? I'm so curious. If you're like me, you can easily slip into the who cares mindset and keep yourself on mute. It's no coincidence that I've talked about that a lot this year. But the truth is, the answer is always someone. Someone actually cares. Whether that someone comments or not, whether that someone is you, which I talk about in the last episode of this podcast, someone cares about you speaking up and sharing what's on your heart and your mind today. And then in this email, I say, don't believe me? Here are just a few comments that landed in my Insta inbox this morning after launching my informal story study. And literally the nicest things. Love your insights. Just so you know, I listened to everything and had to message you. I love watching your updates. I like the randomness, smiley face. That is why I like stories, because for most people it is random, and I love that realness. I love Insta stories because I feel like I get to know someone a little better. I don't feel so alone on the entrepreneurial journey. It can be that simple. If we'll let it be that simple, this is just proof. This is one little tiny micro experiment that I decided was inspired to, rather. Yeah, I decided to be inspired and actually do it, to host last week. And then the results were instant. In my inbox, people saying, I'm totally watching and I love it and I hope you'll do more. And you might feel like that's ridiculous, because who actually cares? Like, who wants to hear that from you? But I also feel like it's ridiculous, and yet it's reality. I just want to tell you, from the other side of the decision to actually do it, I also feel like it's ridiculous. For example, the last podcast episode, I wanted to re-record it. I actually shut my computer and I thought I uploaded it and sent it, and I was like, ooh, done. And then my editor, hi Matt, was like, hey Nikki, by the way, the file didn't actually upload to Dropbox or whatever. And I was like, oh shoot, maybe this is a sign and I need to re-record it because it was really rambly and it sucked. Like, I'm so hard on myself for that. And I'm working on it, getting better at healing the stuff like the perfectionism that's so deeply rooted, and the like censorship and filtering and all of that. But like pretty much every time I would send a blog post out or a podcast, I'm always like, oh, I could have done that differently or whatever. And it's like, okay, but the decision is just do it and put it out there and try as much as you can to release and detach from the outcome and know that the decision to show up for you, for your work, for your community that day, that's all you need. And if we can just keep doing that and keep making the decision to show up for ourselves, and then as a result, showing up for others, that's literally, it's all we can do. So I hope that that helps you today and encourages you to know that there's not a difference. Again, yes, special snowflake. We're all special snowflakes and no one's a special snowflake. But the only difference is the decision. And I'm not even asking you to compare yourself to anyone else who's further along for whatever reason on their journey. I just want you to think about you and think about the you who does the thing and the you who says, hey, fear, cool, I see you, but like, I got this, thanks, and does it anyway. So the only difference between you and her is the decision. So I just want to encourage you, please just decide that you're worth it. Someone cares. And again, even if the someone is you, it's worth it. It will feel so good on the other side. And I would love to celebrate with you for real. So if this inspires you to actually do the darn thing, please find me on Facebook or Instagram or whatever and tag me, because I want to celebrate with you, celebrate you and celebrate with you. And of course, I'd love to hear about it in the Facebook group as well. So you'll get the link for that here. In closing, there is no difference. It's just a decision. You don't have to overthink it. You don't have to know what's going to happen. You just need to take the action, move your feet, and then you'll be able to see what the next step is from there. I promise. You've got this, and I'll see you next time. This show may be over, but the conversation is just beginning. Head on over to naptimeempires.com/Facebook so you can join my free... Wait, did I say free? I meant priceless, rapidly growing community of Naptime Empire builders for deeper discussions, behind-the-scenes scoop, and of course, updates whenever I've got new stuff coming up for you. naptimeempires.com/Facebook. See you there.
See you next time. Thanks for listening.